So, tough to follow up, Mitch. He covered a lot, but he actually segued into Hub, so this is good. So I'm Hunter, I'm new here, and we'll be going over ArcGIS Hub and kind of what it is and how it works, and just kind of give you guys a background into it, and maybe give you some ideas on what you can do for your organization. So I like to start with one-liners when I give a presentation of kind of like what we're going over. And the first one here is what I got from Esri. And Hub is an easy to configure cloud platform that organizes people, data, and tools to accomplish initiatives and goals, and kind of revolves around data collection and your GIS services. But then as I got into using it and building some test sites for this presentation, I kind of came up with my own. That's, it's basically just low code web design. It's a platform that's centered around your organization's GIS data and mostly your applications. And, it's really there for building engagement with both internal and external stakeholders. And kind of like, to sum it all up, it's this cool electronic bridge because, we all have data that's in our organization, and you have maybe internal or particularly external stakeholders, people in your city or your county that you want to interact with. And a hub site is a perfect bridge to kind of put those two things together. So I wanted to touch on there's two different types of hub. Basic is what we all get with ArcGIS Online. So if you have an ArcGIS Online set up for your organization, then you have Hub and you have the basic version. And there's a lot that you can do with the basic version. The main thing is you can have unlimited individual pages. So you can have as many single page initiatives that you want to set up. And there's also some single page templates that come with basic. So if you don't want to start from scratch, you can look at what other people have done and what Esri has set up and kind of use those to get started if you have an idea. And one thing that I wanted to touch on that I kind of figured out while I was getting into it was I was kind of questioning, how do I have this library of ArcGIS Online content, and how does that work with this interaction with the public? Well, what they've set up is this kind of like intermediate library that is tied to your individual page. So you go into the page that you're building and you set up a content library that's specific to the page. So you can look through your all of your data in ArcGIS Online, and you can select items to be brought into the individual page library for people to see and interact with. Another thing in basic, you get what they call a core team, which is basically just an ArcGIS Online group that's made whenever you create a site. And you can add users in your organization to that group and allow them to help collaborate and develop your site. And you can integrate Server 123 forms, dashboards, and web applications all inside of your hub. So they can be not just links, but you can have them actually be running embedded in the site. And then there's some sharing controls that you can set up, like anything. A hub site is kind of like another piece of content in your organization. If you log into ArcGIS Online, it has sharing controls like anything else, where they can be set to private, group shared, or totally public. So, and then with premium, this was a thing you would have to pay for extra, but you get all the basic options, which is really all you really need to get started, I think, for anybody that's going to make their first site. And then you get these unlimited multi-page initiatives. So you can have, like, instead of just one single page, you can have these tabs, like what we've seen in some of Mitch's examples, where one page is linked to all these other pages for different things. So that's kind of cool, and I'll show some cool examples of those. And then you get access to not only the basic single page templates, but some multi-page initiative templates. And what's really cool with premium is that you could have multiple teams with custom collaboration roles and content sharing. So instead of just one core team, which is what you get with basic, you can set up multiple teams. Maybe you have some people that are your design people, and they just only need to be able to help publish a draft of your page, and they're only kind of making sure everything works good and the user interface is good. Or maybe you have some people that are actually working with the data and bringing that in and customizing data in ArcGIS Online or your items and making them really kind of geared towards what you want the site or your initiative to be about. And then the last thing with Premium that's pretty cool, if you had a really big initiative you're setting off, is that you can have external users. So people that are outside of your ArcGIS Online organization, you don't have users for people like maybe there's some students, you're doing something with a school project, or maybe another organization that's, doesn't have ArcGIS Online, or they're not in your ArcGIS Online. You can add those people just with an email and kind of give them a user, and then you can set them in one of the multiple groups or teams that you can set up and kind of give them some different roles and privileges to your site. So like one thing, maybe you have an external web page design group that you use. You have somebody that you want to help collaborate with the design of the page. That person could be an external user. Bring them in, give them certain roles. Maybe you want them to be able to design the site, but not actually send the publish to the public-facing site. So that's just kind of a cool example of what you can do with Premium and the external users. So the biggest question I had was like, how do I get started, right? So we all have the capabilities to build a basic hub site. And the first thing that I kind of learned as I went through creating one myself was that you may need to go into your ArcGIS Online content and create and or modify the content itself that you want to share. So likely your organization, if you have ArcGIS Online, has some web apps or maps, or maybe some Survey 1 through 3 forms that are in your content library and are set to public, and you're sharing those with people, or maybe some internal staff. But when you start putting together the website or the hub site, you may realize that maybe I need to change something or modify the content, and maybe you didn't initially create it for a public-facing application that was going to be used. So we were looking at one of our ArcGIS Online organizations and saw that everything was actually really nice and set up to be public, so we went ahead and used that. But I could see how looking at other organizations, you may need to modify some stuff. And really, for kind of the idea we're going for here today is a public hub site. So you need to set the sharing of items to be public. So and that kind of goes back to the first bullet. Maybe you need to modify some things. They were set to be internal, and then you kind of want to open them up to be shared via this hub site. You may need to modify and set the sharing to be public. But really, from there, once you kind of get a look at your background data that you want to use, then you just go to ArcGIS Online and open up a new hub site and start designing away. So I have some live examples, and just to kind of get started, I wanted to show a really cool example that I found. That was DC has this really cool open data site, and but it's kind of geared around the hub development. And this is your typical multi-page hub site that you can have, and they've got all these a gallery of items and things linked in here, pieces of dashboards, and the main page here. And this is kind of similar to what Mitch showed us earlier, but you can tell that they've used pieces of hub and kind of set this up to be a really good example of what you can do with hub if you kind of dive in and really spend some time on it. But so they have these data stories, which was kind of cool. I got looking into these, and there was a plethora of things that you can use to dive into data about DC, but they kind of had this cool link to a story that was no tree left behind. So it's just kind of this story map, but it just shows how easily you can get people to kind of walk through your site and see all of maybe the different initiatives and things that your organization is doing that may otherwise be left unnoticed. So this kind of goes through and has all these little things, but one of the coolest things is this, how they have this web map in here where maybe you want to go in and find a tree to plant. So it was just kind of a cool example of like maybe what the end goal of a really nice premium hub site would be. And then there's Douglas County. I just kind of like the layout, and they have one of my favorite things here is they have their maps and apps like really set up nicely. And so these were kind of the workflows I was using to try to find inspiration to build my first site. And I think for those of you that end up wanting to maybe give this a try, the best thing you can do is first go out and look at what some other people have done to kind of try to conceptualize what you want to do before you get started. But, you know, they have just all kinds of stuff. And again, this kind of ties into creating and modifying your data. So start thinking about how you would group your data. If it's not already grouped, you know, some things are put in there haphazardly. They're not all tagged correctly and put in nice tidy groups in ArcGIS Online. So looking at some of these examples of these well-developed sites kind of gives you an idea of like, well, maybe I need to start modifying and grouping my data a little differently so that it works well and blends into this nice hub site. But to get started, and that's kind of where we left off, how easy is it to get started? Well, here's the city of Pekin. So this was the organization I used to create a test site. They have a lot of really nice public-facing web applications that are made to be shared and kind of provide the public engagement and the public data sharing that is really what Hub is all about. So if you are in your ArcGIS Online organization, you can just go into the app selector and click Hub, and here you are. You are ready to get started. So you see there's a couple sites here. This is the one that I put together for today. Just a kind of example of what I was able to do in a relatively short amount of time and kind of throw things together. But if you want to go in and start a new site, you can just click New, and here's where you can browse some templates or just create the basic bootstrap site. You know, it just kind of gives you the layout, and you can modify from there and give it a name. But you'll see in here there's some templates of maybe like a specific project site. And these are the initiatives that I was talking about. If you had a real directive that you wanted to share some data to. But for just kind of starting out, I think starting just a basic site. So we could give it like, we'll call it the webinar test site. Call it whatever you want. And then within a few seconds, it's already made us a nice template to start with. And it's got the splash screen saying, hey, here's how you get started. Customize your theme and branding. Add in some layout items. Maybe you want to use the dashboard to track some metrics. There's teams. So now if you go back in ArcGIS Online, you'll see there's a core team created around the site name. So it would be, you know, around webinar test. And you can add people to that to help collaborate. And then you can add, you know, it's already saying like, hey, integrate some Server 123 forms for feedback. You know, maybe it's just a form you make about your site. Do you like it? What would you like to see changed? What would you like to see added? That is totally doable and easy to do with these hub sites. And then the content library. So that's kind of where we'll start, just to show you this is like the crux of getting a site going. You can create new content, but for most of us who just want to go into your ArcGIS Online organization and look at all of the data. So you can see there's 175 items in here. But if I'm going to make a public app, how do I get started? How do I filter that down? Well, in the sidebar here, you can look at the sharing levels, and maybe just to get started, you want to start with anything that's public. So now we have all of these items that are public, and we want to start with maybe sharing some web apps and add those to our content library for the site. So you're in the apps and maps, and then you can go to maybe web apps. And you can click these and have them added to, you know, let's start with maybe the enterprise zone web app and garbage pickup by day. And hit select, and now you're going to see that your content library, which is the library for the site, now has a few items in it. So this is just quickly and easily a way to kind of get things set up and make them accessible. If you go back into the site homepage. So here's your content library. We can go down here and add something in. You know, let's get rid of this. This is a stock thing. And we could say, hey, you know what? I want to add a gallery of some things that I've brought into my content library. So it's automatically going to pull from that content library. And that's kind of the basic. And this kind of illustrates the click and drag. Very, you know, there's almost no code that needs to be done for this. Now you can. Some of these text boxes, you can go to HTML coding and see, maybe write your own, get some CSS styling in your items for any of you that are familiar with that. But you can change this stuff with just some Dropbox stuff, which is really one of the benefits of all of the Esri products. You don't need to physically go in and write code and styles and tags. So you know, you can change this to a big banner if you want. It just quickly does all that stuff for you. So and you can change, you know, any of this stuff. So real quick, like something you may want to do right off the bat. Hey, I like this really cool picture, but maybe I want to bring in my own. So I went ahead and I've got some photos I pulled off the internet. And just like that, your opening page is customized with a nice picture. So this kind of is the background of designing a hub site. And of course, you know, we could go into a lot of this stuff and how to set it up, but I kind of just wanted to show how easy it is to get started and what you can do right off the bat with your existing ArcGIS online subscription. So, but to loop back around, so this is something that we made, or I made, for kind of a test. We used Pekin's GIS and just kind of set up, hey, here's what it would look like. And this is, you know, a very rough draft, but something that I took the basic hub site. So you can, if you remember, this is kind of the layout it had, but I changed the background image and the title, and we've got some categories set up that were, you know, tailored to Pekin's data. So, you know, if you click on these, then it's going to bring you anything that has what a tag in ArcGIS Online. So also I made, just as an example, some public facing Survey 123 forms. So you could embed one that's live and you can see the whole thing in your page, or you can do what I've done here, where I made a gallery like I showed you on the last test page, chose just my Survey 123 forms that were uploaded into my content library. And now when people come here, they can easily see, like, oh man, you know, there's a storm drain that's constantly flooding into my yard because it's so clogged with debris, leaves, and all that other stuff. So you know what, this is a great place. Like, hey, here you go, let's launch this. Now you go ahead and fill out a Survey 123 form and let us know if it's a new request or an old request. This is the epitome of this public engagement that you're trying to get. So you may have already had these forms out there, but how do I get them out to the public? Well, this is a great example. Now people can come in and submit requests and go from there. And same thing with maybe there's a damaged sidewalk. So it's just a really cool and fun way, at least for me. I had a really fun time designing this, thinking of like, what would it be like if I was the actual GIS person for Pekin? I wanted to get this stuff out. And then another gallery, maybe you just want to group together all of your web apps. So, and you can sort these and drag and drop however you want. You can have multiple sections, so maybe just a web app for the public utilities or zoning, or you know, some of this stuff. But I just kind of threw together what they have out there already. And then as you scroll down, you can see there's a tie to some of the PDF maps, which you know, it's a digital age, it's 2020, but there's still a need or maybe a request for PDF maps. So this was kind of a cool link to kind of throw back what they have now. And so this kind of links into, this is the original Pekin site. And so just to kind of show the dichotomy, this is their GIS map page as it stands right now. So when you go into Pekin site and you want to look for GIS data, this is what you get. And then the alternative is something like this, where the whole website is centered around GIS data. So, you know, if you are in the organization and you have this ability to create a hub site and maybe look at what your city or your county or your entity is offering now, maybe this is the demonstration that you needed to see to think, well, maybe we should, ramp this up. Maybe we should, kind of redo our site and how we share this data and really foster more public engagement, because that's really what it's all about. You have all this data and it really doesn't do any good if you're just keeping it all internal and not sharing it with anyone, because the more engagement we have, the more value you get out of all this GIS data that you have. So that's just kind of the rundown. And I know I'm probably talking too fast because we're ahead of schedule, but there's certainly time for questions, and I don't know. It's 9:43, but
you're doing great. We've got a couple here actually.
Yeah, I can't see them. So
demo question: can you show adding the survey 123 form to Hub?
To get it embedded, or I think we can go in here too. So if you so here's the survey card, so we could add this down. I will insert a new row. So from here, then we can go back and pull in a survey. So here, we want to select our survey and go to public, and looks like, oh, there's a bunch of ones. So I guess my organization, well, let's just show
survey
one
about
of these.
Myself. Add the survey about myself. I want to see what that is.
So here's, I guess, so I'd have to save this and publish it. And so here's kind of an example of when you make these edits. This is a good segue to this. You have to save your site, and this is kind of like a internal development mode. It's saving your edits, but only after you click this and say publish is it going to publish whatever the public facing side of this URL would be. So now we can go into view published, and this is actually the live version. So in here now it's going to open the survey just like we had earlier. So there are kind of different ways to do it, but let's see.
Hey Hunter, can I add something to this?
Yeah, sure.
What I see a lot is that when organizers build a hub site, they don't want one more click to prevent someone from giving them data, right? We want public input, right? So if you go back to that you have the ability to embed that survey directly in the site, or you can link to it like you showed there.
So maybe
in the configurations of it. I see that a lot in organizations, because they don't want that one more click to prevent someone being like, oh, I'm not going to take that survey. But if it's embedded in the site.
So
that was actually just a configuration of the the previous one you had.
Oh, this was?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The previous.
So, but yeah, I guess I didn't get into the embedding, but you certainly can have it just running live in the page. But were there other questions?
Yeah, we've got a couple in here. Do people use Hub to create page or site for permitting?
I think, and Mitch, you can probably answer this too, but I think that would be a great initiative that you could do. And if you go into, if you make a new site and look at some of these if you go into Learn ArcGIS and there's the hub, there's all these different trainings to go through getting started, but there's also a bunch of galleries that you can look at, a gallery of items that you can see and kind of get that started. But I think with the right, if you took the time to design it right, that would be a perfect example of something that an organization could start with to use Hub. You have this one single site that's just tailored around a project, and that's where you kind of have the central repository of all of your data and how you share it with either an internal group that you put together or the external public.
Let's see, a couple more here. How does the responder in the city get the notifications that a new survey has been submitted?
That would be something that would be like some custom coding that would go into maybe using a program like Integromat, or Integromat's probably the best one because Esri had teamed up with Integromat to set up a bunch of functionality for notifications to people via text or email whenever a new thing is submitted. And Mitch, you probably know more about that. Or
I was going to say at that point, it's mostly a configuration of the survey 123 survey rather than Hub. In Hub, we just take the survey and embed it into the application so that you can see that, which is fantastic. But then the configuration and the communication between survey 123 and Integromat and email and all that kind of stuff is more of a function of that. Am I right?
The design I've done in Server 123, we tested Integromat to send those notifications on a new submission. So I know it can work that way. But as far as the hub site, yeah, it wouldn't be initiating any notification just from the site.
And so that probably dovetails into this. Can you show us how someone would submit a sidewalk claim?
Yeah, that would be, you can go in here and do the published. So, and again, Mitch had a good point. Maybe you want this to just open up in your actual page instead of linking out. But so this is uneditable. It's already going to default to a damaged sidewalk. And I got some required fields in here. Would this be a new request? Let's say yes. Put in your name, your email. So it's already not going to, if you don't have the common parameters of an email, it's going to throw you an error. If you don't put in your phone number correctly, then it will let you know that that's not right. I better make sure that's 10. All right. And so then you would click on the map and you can open this up to full screen, or you can use here. So let's say like, oh, you know what? Right here, there is a really bad sidewalk right in front of the house here. And it's already some back-end coding. It's already pulling whatever address you clicked on the map, but then it gives you the chance to kind of put in, maybe that wasn't exactly correct, and it was, 712 Court Street. And see, I'm jumping the gun. This is what Server 123 is good at. This is why it can never go away. It tailors your entries to make sure that if somebody's trying to put in a bad entry, it's going to let you know. So that was Court Street. Oh, maybe not. For some reason, that's not going to take it. But it's already got your city and state, because this is pulling from the map. We can at least assume that, and then put in your zip code and maybe a quick description. And then you hit submit. And if there are errors, then it's going to let you know that you didn't fill everything out right. But that's it. It's that easy. They hit submit. It'll go. and then they'll go back to, maybe they also had a storm drain request. So that's kind of the workflow of how it works with at least what I've set up right now.
And again, that's mostly the Survey 123 configuration. And Mike, no, it was Matt. Mike's kind of like the Survey 123 person, but is Matt, I think you're talking a little bit more, your inspection forms is about Survey 123 at the end?
Yes, we'll go through Survey 123 Connect in the Excel form and kind of do a little quick tour of that.
Yeah, great, awesome.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Hunter.